Welcome into Sideline Signal. I'm Andrew, as always, joined by Tyler. We just got done with the Christmas season. We're heading into the New Year's, which means we're getting the quarterfinals of the college football playoffs. A lot of great games. We got Boise State versus Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. We got Texas, Arizona State in the Peach Bowl. Ohio State, Oregon in the Rose Bowl, a little rematch from earlier in the season. And to end off, Georgia versus Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. A lot of exciting games. We're going to break them down, give you our picks and our keys to the game. We're going to have a little bit of discussion about some of the bowl games after. But let's start off. The big game happening tomorrow, or I guess this morning when we upload the video, or tonight when we upload this video. New Year's Eve, Boise State versus Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. The Group of Five champion taking on one of the powerhouses in the Big Ten. Tyler, I'll let you start off. What do you see? How do you see this game going? Do you think this is chalk? Do you think Penn State win it? And how do you think Boise State can make this competitive?
So I think we all know how Boise State can make it competitive. If Ashton Genty is on his game, they will be able to compete. Now, that's the question because Penn State's defense is really, really good. Now, something that Penn State, obviously they trounced SMU. Something they had going for them was the weather. This game is going to be inside. The weather will not be a factor. Not that I'm saying that Penn State's obviously got the most talent. Ashton Genty's off the record by 158 yards. He's averaging 192 per game. If he breaks the record, I think Boise State's within two scores. Like if he gets to 160, and breaks that record, breaks Barry Sanders' record, it's close. But if he is under that, it's going to be ugly. So I'm going to pick Penn State here. I think it's going to be closer, but that's also because I want it to be closer, if you get what I'm saying. Because Andrew and I are obviously we're fans of this kind of format. I want to see these small schools, this group of five school, have a chance here, and maybe that's just wishful thinking. But I really think Boise State can do it. I think they have the ability to pull it off. They've done this underdog mentality before, and heck, they're wearing the same uniform combination they wore in the 2007 Fiesta Bowl when they pulled up that major upset against the Oklahoma Sooners, off that Statue of Liberty play. But I'm going to go with Penn State. I think just physically they'll dominate. I think Genty does break the record, however, and I think that it is like the spread is spot on. I think it's like a two possession game. They just don't have the firepower defensively to match up with like Tyler Warren and Drew Aller in that run game with Singleton. And Katron Allen as well. So I think Penn State outlasts them, but I do think it's going to be very entertaining.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I'm taking Penn State, and it's funny because obviously last week for the first round of the playoffs, our key to the game, especially mine, was to speed the game up, make this game a shootout, and I see it being in the similar fashion for Boise State. They have to make this game a shootout. Obviously, we know Ashton Genty, he gets around 30 carries a game. That's just who he is. We know that Boise State's going to give him the ball. Heisman finalist for a reason. We see his skill set. But I'm concerned because I feel like this is going to be the most physical D line they'll play all season. And Boise State's offensive line has not been the greatest all season, even in the Mountain West. So I'm concerned if Penn State just start to stack the box like they should, because that's essentially how you game plan against Boise State, that a guy like Abdul Carter is just going to feast because of the lack of offensive line's physicality compared to how stout that D line is at Penn State. Now I'll say, obviously, Ashton Genty getting it going, that's always going to be their key to winning. But I really want to see how Maddox Madsen can adjust because I think there's going to be times where you can't rely on Genty to break those big runs for 30 yards, 30 plus yards, the yards after contact. It's just not realistic with a D line like this. So I think much like last week with Jennings, it's going to be for Maddox Madsen. He has to get it going. He has to be able to improvise. If they can get the pass game going, I really think that Penn State might get caught off guard. If they pass more than they run, kind of switch up their mentality, I think it could be good. Try to, limit the turnovers on offense. Obviously, SMU struggled immensely with that. But yeah, Boise State can limit the turnover, just win the turnover battle. I think this could be a lot closer game. Although I agree with you offensively. I think Tyler Warren, Katron Allen, they have just too much talent. I think it's been a great story. I've loved what Boise State's been able to do this year. I'm going to take Penn State, although obviously early in the season we saw Boise State was able to handle, tough competition. They only lost at Autzen Stadium by 3 points to obviously number one Oregon. But I don't know. I think rising to the occasion, I think they're going to build off of this for the next few years. But I'm going to take Penn State to win this one.
Yeah, and that's a good point with Maddox talking about that. And I just want to say one more thing before we move on to the game. It's going to come down to that third down efficiency. Are they going to be able to run Genty and get 6 yards before third down? That's really going to be the key. Now, obviously, we're talking about Ashton Genty. He's one of the, if not the greatest college running back in the history of the game. But like, is he going to average 2 yards a carry or is he going to average 4 yards a carry? That's huge in a game like this. Because I agree with you. I think that if Boise State comes out and passes more, Penn State might be caught off guard, but they're going to adjust. Penn State's going to adjust to that. If Genty can get them to 3rd and 3 or even 2nd and 4 or 2nd and 3, and then they're able to play action pass or take shots off of that, then they're going to be able to capitalize, I think, a bit better. But for Penn State, just stay in your lanes, stay in your gaps. And yeah, I agree. You're going to load the box. You're going to load the box until they can prove that they can beat you through the air. And that's really going to be the key for Boise State. Should be a fun one. I'm super excited. What a way to ring in the new year, obviously. And then we got 3 games, you won 8:45 Eastern time. It's going to be so awesome on New Year's Day. Heading to Atlanta with this one in the Peach Bowl. We got number 5 Texas versus number 4 Arizona State. Now, this is an interesting one. To start off the day, 1 p.m. Eastern, as I mentioned on ESPN. Andrew, who you got?
I'm going chalk again. I'm going to take Texas, although I think this Arizona State team is a bit of a wild card to me. Obviously, they've had an exciting year. They were picked last to finish last in the Big 12. They had an incredible run in the regular season. Cam Scadaboo's been phenomenal to watch. They go and they win the Big 12. They get the bye. So I think they're a wild card in terms of I don't think people expect them to come out firing and this being a competitive game. But I think they'll make it a game. I think Cam Scadaboo will have a big game, but I think defensively they'll play solid. That being said, though, I just think the talent on Texas is going to be too much, all in all. I think Kenny Dillingham's done a great job this season, but I think Texas is ready, and I think they're kind of setting it up for that semifinal between Texas and either Ohio State or Oregon. I will say, as always, we kind of talk about it. Which Quinn Ewers shows up is going to be important for Texas. But I ultimately think that it's just going to be too much for them to handle. Quintrevion Weiser, Matthew Golden, Jaden Blue, Gunnar Helm. It's just too many weapons on offense, and Sarkisian likes to make it difficult to game plan for. They have a lot of trick plays, a lot of motions, a lot of things that are going to throw off Arizona State's defense. So I will say my key to the game to make it competitive, Arizona State have to play a disciplined game on defense if they want to make this competitive. Because Quinn Ewers can sling the ball when he's on it. And even if he's off, you're going to have an opportunity to be in this game. But if you're playing undisciplined football, like I said, Sarkisian's going to line up some trick plays. He's going to make it exciting. He's going to try to confuse them. And if they can't handle it and they can't stay disciplined, it's going to be a blowout. Like I said, I think Texas wins by 2 scores, but I think Arizona State will be in it for a while, but Texas will run away at the end.
And we saw some trash talking from Sam Levitt talking about it, saying that Quinn Ewers wasn't that impressive. And Quinn Ewers responds and said, they had a great season and I can't wait to play them. That showed me a little bit there. Quinn Ewers' response was professional. It was calm, cool, and collected. And that really tells me the difference between Arizona State, Texas. I'm going to take Texas in this one. It's also worth noting that Isaiah Bond is going to play in this game. So they get their gadget guy back. I don't think they can keep up. We talked about Penn State and Boise State as well. We're talking about a team with a better passing offense and a good run game. That's Texas has the much better passing offense and a very good run game. Whereas the passing offense for Arizona State can be amazing at times. It has been lackluster as well. It's not like Sam Levitt was like a Heisman finalist or anything like that. He had a great year. He got it done. Don't get me wrong. And he's super young. He's a freshman. So, he's got time. But if Scadaboo can't get it going, like kind of similar to Genty, if he's averaging 2 yards a carry, this is going to be ugly really, really fast. Because like Boise State, Arizona State, I don't know how many stops they're going to get, even if Quinn Ewers is off. Because like you said, you hand it off to Wisner, you hand it off to Blue, they could be averaging 6, 7 yards a carry, like kind of like they did, early in the season against teams. Texas A&M, they were getting 5 yards apiece the entire game and kind of just drove right down the field. So the weapons are there for Texas. I think they take care of business. I like what you said, two scores. That's about what I think. I think it'll be competitive. I think it's going to be physical. I think Arizona State's going to bring physicality, which is something that I don't think people expect. I think people expect that Texas is just going to walk all over them. I don't see that. You look at Kenny Dillingham. He's young. He's going to be fired up. He's going to get his guys fired up. They're going to be flying around. I just want to see how long that lasts. So, you know, I can't tell you how many times LSU, Alabama, where Alabama's the better team, and they get all fired up, and then you just smash, and you just know that you're not going to be able to stop them, and that's kind of similar to what I'm seeing in this game. So I'm taking the Longhorns, but it should be exciting, and I want to see what Cam Scatterbo can do against a defense of this caliber, and he can really help his draft stock, and that's something that might not be talked about it. He talked about it. He's like, "Oh, I'm the best running back in the country." Prove it, because you're lining up against two top five backs in the country, in Blue and Wisner as well there. So should be a fun one.
Yeah, I think slow starts is something that Arizona State absolutely cannot afford to
Mm.
do. I think the first quarter of this game is going to be the most important quarter. We're going to get the expectations. We're going to see how they match up. If Texas start to build a lead early, I think they run away with it, but you can't put a team that has nothing to lose into a corner because they'll go down swinging. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be physical. I think it's going to be fast, and I think it's going to be a fun one to watch. But obviously, what a great way to kick off the new year with that. Then we're moving into, honestly, in my eyes, the most even game of the playoff slates. A game, obviously, I'm a little biased in, but I'm absolutely terrified to watch as a fan of one of these teams. And of course, I'm talking about the Rose Bowl. We get the rematch between Oregon and Ohio State. Oregon win 32-31 in the regular season at Autzen Stadium. Great game. Came down to the wire. Obviously, Will Howard slides, but couldn't get the timeout off in time. Oregon win it. We're getting the rematch. I personally think the winner of this game could be the winner of the national championship game. Obviously, last week, Ohio State dominant win at home versus Tennessee. Now going in, Oregon's had the time to prepare, the time off to rest and recover. I'll let you start off. How do you see the Rose Bowl going?
So this, without a doubt, this regular season matchup was the game of the year. We can only hope for it to be half as good as that game was, because I couldn't stop watching that game. And LSU was in a tight one against Ole Miss that entire game, and I was watching the Oregon game more because it was just so much. It was so much excitement. I'm gonna pick Ohio State just for the sake of disagreeing with Andrew. I'm not gonna lie, this is a toss up. I want Oregon to win. I think they deserve it. I think they're the better team. But Ohio State really just, I did not expect them to just walk all over Tennessee. And maybe we could see that coming. SEC schools don't do well in bowl games or whatever you want to call it. But these are the two most talented teams in the country, and they're playing each other. Without a doubt in my mind, these two rosters are the most talented on both sides of the ball. It's just juggernaut versus juggernaut. I can't even really give you many keys because every matchup is a key. It's Ohio State's offense versus Oregon's staunch defense. On the other side, it's Oregon's efficient, methodical, methodical into explosive plays versus Ohio State's amazing defense, on both sides there. So I kind of feel like the kicking game is going to be it. I said it the first time and it was true. And I think that it's going to come down to a field goal, kind of like that. Obviously, like you said, Will Howard couldn't get down in time for Ohio State to kick a potential game winning field goal, but Oregon's kicking, I believe, was the difference, wasn't it? They got was it a touchdown, or was it an extra point or something?
Atticus Sappington kicked a field goal late to give us the 1 point lead.
Yeah, so I see something similar to that. This is going to be a classic, much must watch TV. If you're doing anything but watching this game, you're wrong. I'm going to go with Ohio State, but I, I agree with you. I think the winner of this game makes it to the Natty at least. So this is going to be just the mother of all Rose Bowls. I love it. The uniform matchup is insane as well. I can only wonder who Andrew's picking, but maybe you can give us some keys here. I don't know.
Yeah, obviously, I'm taking Oregon, being a fan of Oregon. I've been a lifelong Duck. So I got to ride with my boys. It's going to be played on the decade anniversary of the last playoff win Oregon's had, obviously January 1st, 2015, against Florida State in the Rose Bowl. So a little fun anniversary there. Again, I think this is going to be such a balanced matchup. Like you said, offensively, Ohio State has a high-powered offense. I mean, you can pull any of the names of their receivers out, and they're a stud. They have two insanely talented running backs. They have a pretty solid but injured offensive line. And Will Howard's been great this season. Defensively, extremely talented. Their secondary staunch, their D line is staunch. But it's the same with Oregon. Like you said,
Yeah.
they are efficient and explosive on offense. They can kill time when they need to. They need to beat you on a one play touchdown, they're going to. Offensive line's been extremely solid. And defensively, again, one of the best teams in the country defensively. I will say the big key to me, which I'm excited to see, this matchup this time around, Oregon will have Jordan Birch in the lineup. Obviously, he missed the first matchup against Ohio State due to an oblique injury. He was out for 2, 3 weeks, but we get him back, one of our best edge rushers on the team, and he's been a force since he's been healthy. And that's the thing is defend like the D line and was able to relatively stop the run game for Ohio State in the first matchup. So Derek Harmon, he comes up with a strip for fumble recovery in the game, caused it. Turnovers are always going to be the difference in games like this. Whoever wins the turnover battle has a high chance of winning the game. I think Oregon right now, they're confident, but I'm curious to see how that time off, not playing since the Big Ten championship, will impact them. But if they can get to Will Howard, make him throw under pressure, stop the run game, just honestly, again, like you said, I agree the kicking game is going to be extremely important. I think Atticus Sappington's been great this season. He's kind of had a little bit of a slow start, but shook it off. He's been consistent. But if the D line can get constant pressure, I'm looking at Mateo Uiagalelei to get to the quarterback. If he can get to Will Howard and guys like Caldwell and Derek Harmon in the interior D line can stop the run game of Quinshon Judkins and Trayvon Henderson, I think this could be Oregon's game to win. Obviously, it all depends on how offensively they do. You can pick any of them. Any of the matchups are going to be tough. You got Caleb Downs, who's a phenomenal, a Bednarik Award nominee. So you got Igbinosun, who has been penalized a lot, but when he's on his game, he's a talented corner. You got Denzel Burke, who, again, phenomenal corner. He got torched in the first matchup. So I'm curious to see if Oregon try to hammer him in one-on-one matchups. Although I think Ohio State might game plan for that. I don't know. It's going to be close. I'm really excited. I hope Jordan James can have a big game running. He was pretty solid in the first matchup. If he can have a day, I believe he's one of two players. Him and Ashton Genty are the only two running backs in the country who have had 100 yards rushing in every single game this season. So if he's able to get that done, get another 100-yard rush game, get a touchdown or two, I think it's Oregon's game to win. But it's going to be close. Could come down to a last-second field goal again. But obviously, I'm taking the Ducks.
That is crazy. I didn't even know that stat. That's wild. They're not giving him any media attention. That seems ridiculous. If he's getting 100 yards a game, he should be in the spotlight there. I'm glad you brought up Big Benosin because I ate my words. I mean, obviously, he had a good game against Squirrel White. Squirrel White gets injured, and then I can't even remember who was lined up against him after that. It didn't really matter. But I'm hoping that these games make up for last. And let's stop hitting the panic button. Let's stop hitting the panic button on the playoff. We've been waiting for this kind of matchup. All of these matchups are going to be classics, I hope. But this one especially is going to be amazing. Think about all the historic Rose Bowls, and it's kind of like an old time Rose Bowl, an old Pac-12 versus an old Big Ten school. So it's really going to be awesome. And just a classic. So we're going split here, but it could really go either way. Kind of a coin flip here as we head to our night game. Now I'm a little upset that it's an 8:45 p.m. kick Eastern time, which is late, about an hour later, but I can't complain. It's college football. We got the 7th seed Notre Dame Fighting Irish coming off a dominant win over Indiana at home, heading to the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans to face the number 2 seeded Georgia Bulldogs. Now, there's a lot of interesting storylines here. Obviously, Carson Beck is not playing. He's declared for the draft. So it's going to be Gunnar Stockton at the helm for Georgia. I don't think anyone's injured on Notre Dame wise, but it's really that machine of Georgia versus this kind of, I want to say growing machine, maybe like a mini machine in Notre Dame. Andrew, who you going with?
I'm going with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And I'll be honest, it's mainly for the fact that they have been the most consistent team in football since their loss to NIU. They look like a well-oiled machine. They don't do many things wrong in their games. Obviously, Indiana, they didn't have to do much to win that game, but they did what they needed to do right. And that's been the story of their season since that NIU loss. Their defense has played so well in these games that offensively, they don't really have to do anything. I look back to Navy when they had 7 turnovers forced. Their defense just said, we're going to win the game for you. Offensively, they had a mediocre day, but they didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that was the story of that Indiana game last week. Their defense played really well. Obviously, we had that Jeremiah Love 98-yard rushing touchdown, which was ridiculous, but they just play a perfect game almost every single game. They just sit back, they play a solid first half and third quarter of football. Going into the fourth, they kind of just coast through. I will say, this is not a team that you can kind of coast through. I didn't like the slow end, that sloppy end where they allow Indiana to score and then allow them to recover the onside kick. They really need to clean that up because you can't afford to do that against a team like Georgia. And I think the biggest concern for me is I don't know how well Gunnar Stockton's going to play. Obviously, he was fired up and he led them to the SEC championship win after Carson Beck goes down. Obviously, he's had surgery on his UCL now. He's missing the remainder of the season and has declared, but now we've had time off. You get a little bit of film on Gunnar Stockton. Granted, it's only a half, so you have a small sample size to go off of, but a team's going to be able to prepare. And he's going to be nervous. This is the biggest game of his career, and it's his first start of his career. How is he going to be able to handle that pressure? That being said, he has a surplus of talent around him. We said it with Texas, but I would argue it's the same with Georgia. We know Georgia's defense is going to make it hard for Riley Leonard and the Notre Dame boys, but how's Gunnar Stockton going to handle that pressure? Kirby Smart's going to have the team ready, but I think all that pressure is going to lie on the performance of the youngster Gunnar Stockton. I don't know. This is where we see Georgia wins if he can handle the pressure. If he can't, they won't. And I just think right now, I think that pressure is going to be too much for him to handle. I think he'll be a stud for them in the future. I think he's the future of the Georgia quarterback room, but right now, I don't know if he can handle that pressure. Because of that, I'm going to take Notre Dame. I think, again, kind of like Ohio State, Oregon, I think it's decided by a field goal. But like I said, I'm taking the upset. I'm going with Notre Dame.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And I just want to say this for the Georgia fans out there that think there's going to be no drop off. Gunnar Stockton could have won the job. Like I feel like we're kind of treating Gunnar Stockton like he's equal to Carson Beck, but Carson Beck has had horrible games, and you never saw Gunnar Stockton until Carson Beck, got injured. So there's a reason for that. And I agree with you. Like, even though it's a half of film, you can tell the tendencies. It's not like you're running the same offense that Carson Beck has when he's out there. Like Carson Beck, there's no limit. Gunnar Stockton is a little limited. I want to see how he can use his legs. Now, I think that's going to be an X factor because Carson Beck isn't a scrambler, but Gunnar Stockton had some run plays against Texas, and that really was huge for them. Especially that big hit, obviously got lit up. I don't know how he wasn't concussed, but he wasn't. Thank goodness. But I'm going to go with Notre Dame as well. I think Jeremiah Love is the X factor for the Irish. I don't see Riley Leonard having a good game. Just quite simply, I don't think he's going to play well. I think it's going to be Jeremiah Love putting the team on his back. That O line as well. The key is going to be in the trenches. I mean, we're looking Georgia's D line and Notre Dame's O line. Probably all of them NFL prospects at one point or another going to get drafted. So it's going to be really awesome to see in the trenches. But yeah, Jeremiah Love, that's really going to be the guy. If he can get over like 120, maybe a touchdown or two, they win. I really think so. But I don't see Riley Leonard having a good game. And I don't really think it matters because Gunnar Stockton is on that other side. That being said, if Gunnar Stockton, like you said, is able to handle the pressure, Georgia has the advantage for sure. I think, and from what I've seen in Georgia traveling places, especially the Sugar Bowl, it's going to be closer to a Georgia home game than neutral site. And that's no dig at Notre Dame at all. But Georgia travels. Like they travel. They could be playing in Alaska and it would still be sold out if it was the national championship. So it's going to be interesting to see like how Notre Dame kind of deals with that. But I'm going to pick the Irish. I love that upset, and I really hope it happens. Just simply because having possibly two upsets, like that's ideal for me. Two upsets in this round. It doesn't matter which two, just two, and then everyone could shut up about the legitimacy of the 12-team playoff in the format and whatever, and who chose the right teams and what have you. There were plenty of playoff games in the NFL and Super Bowls that were decided by 30 or more points margin of victory. So I don't want to hear it. I think these last two games, Ohio State, Oregon, and Notre Dame, Georgia, are going to be instant classics. But I'm going to take the Irish by an eyelash, and I think Jeremiah Love is the one that is the difference for them.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. Like, I want to note as well, Georgia's looked beatable at times. Obviously, their two loss this year. That Ole Miss game, especially, was very sloppy. But I want to take you back, and I've referenced this a couple times when talking about Georgia this year. Haynes King and the Georgia Tech team, I mean, the Yellow Jackets just ran through them. And so having a mobile QB, obviously they ended up winning in eighth overtime, but having a mobile quarterback, Georgia's kind of struggled with. Obviously, Dart isn't the most mobile and he wasn't running that much against them. But I think a guy like Riley Leonard, if he can get it going with his legs, that could be the difference offensively for Notre Dame. That was our key for Indiana. To stop them, you have to make him a pocket passer. I think the same principle applies, but if Riley Leonard can get it going in the run game, and Jeremiah Love as well, if they can get the ball moving on the ground, it could be a runaway game.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a low scoring because it's going to be like take the air to the ball type drives for each team. And I want to be clear, and thanks for reminding me. I meant through the air. I meant Riley Leonard through the air is going to be bad. Like I don't think he's going to be great. But yeah, I think in terms of his legs, that's going to be huge. And you best believe Marcus Freeman was texting Georgia Tech's coaching staff. You best believe it. Like I'm sure Georgia Tech was giving them everything they possibly could because they hate Georgia. So yeah, Haynes King and Riley Leonard are pretty similar. So that's a pretty good little thread there to think about. But it should be a great one, and I'm really interested to see how Georgia comes out because we've seen Notre Dame play already. Georgia hasn't played for a while. Super emotional SEC title after a super emotional rivalry game win. How much more cardiac do they have in them? And we're going to find out on New Year's Day.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I can't wait.
Yeah. All right. So we have a bit of QB drama in bowl season. Our top two NFL prospects in terms of the quarterbacks, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, each had their own kind of controversy when playing in their bowl games, a couple of days ago over the weekend. I'm going to start here with Cam Ward. Cam Ward decided to play in the Pop Tarts Bowl against Iowa State, played the first half, broke the record for the most passing touchdowns in FBS, which was 156, and amazing accomplishment, and then pulled himself out. Now, fans have been ragging on him. He's been catching a lot of heat online because Miami ends up losing that game 42-41. They had a chance with 56 seconds left to drive down, and with the backup quarterback, there was no way they were going to get there in a back and forth game. And people were like, how can he sit there on the bench checking out of a game where all of his teammates are fighting back and forth? I have a certain opinion about this, but I'm going to let you speak first, Andrew. What do you think about all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing, but ultimately we know that at this point in a player's career, they're already looking towards the NFL draft. He really doesn't care about the Pop-Tart Bowl. I mean, obviously, you and I and fans across college football love the prestige of the Pop-Tart Bowl and all the fun ceremony surrounding it. But at the end of the day, he wanted to give one last hurrah to the Miami program and to the fans, but he shouldn't really care that much about the Pop Tart Bowl. Obviously, you want to win a bowl game every year if you're not making it to the national playoffs, but there is an extent where you have to, as a player, especially one that's projected to be a top five pick, you have to look out for yourself and look out for your health. Because we see the story all the time of players getting hurt in these bowl games and it killing their NFL draft stock and honestly, ultimately ending their NFL careers. A guy who could have been a first round pick that falls into the fifth, and that nagging injury just never let him get to the level he could have been at. So I understand it from that perspective, and especially thinking about it in a 2 minute drill, you're going to be playing fast. D lines are going to try to get you, they're going to try to hit you. Is it worth putting yourself in a situation where you could get injured? I don't think so. So, I mean, I'm disappointed because I understand it's if you're willing to pull yourself out of games, that could be a bad look for scouts, and it's going to probably get brought up in these NFL draft combine interviews. But to me, that one so much, I'm not as concerned about. I'm more concerned, obviously, to the next topic we'll bring up after this. But yeah, Cam Ward, I mean, I'm happy that he was able to get in. He got the record. Did it look a little selfish that he pulled himself after getting the record? Yes, but ultimately, he's already at the point where he can't do much else. Obviously, he can't come back. They're not playing for a national championship game. He wanted to give his last hurrah, but do it in a safe way, obviously. Get some reps in, enjoy the bowl game, but not put himself in a position to get hurt.
Yeah, I don't get it, guys. Why are we complaining about this? He is going to be a top five pick. Even the signing bonus from being a top five pick to later, like we're talking about $10 million at least. Like if you're a top five pick, your signing bonus is anywhere between 20 and $30 million. If you're anywhere back behind 15 to like 30, that's cut in half. At least it might be a quarter of that. This is absolutely ridiculous. We're talking about the man's career. We're lucky he played in the game at all. And he went off, and it was awesome. And we got to see him break the record. If I'm Mario Cristobal, I feel like if you respect the guy, you say like, guys, shut up. like this is about the future. But also like Cam Ward doesn't care. And this is the age of college football. This is his first year there. Like he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the Miami program. He doesn't care about the trophy with the toaster in it. Are you serious? Like this man is not going to risk his family generational wealth for a Pop Tart. There were sprinkles on the sideline. Now I love the Pop Tarts Bowl, like you said, like all the fans love the Pop Tarts Bowl. But this is ridiculous, guys. Let the man live. He's gonna get drafted in April, and he's got that to focus on. I don't love the fact that it like came down to 1 point, and obviously if he comes in for that last drive, I actually think they win. But I'm not going to hold it against him. That I'm not going to hold it against him because you can't be like, oh, I'm pulling myself out and then come back in the fourth quarter. What's the point? What was the point? There's no point. That looks worse in my mind. If you're like, I'm just going to pick and choose my spots when I play. That's kind of similar to like Anthony Richardson when he pulled himself out on third down for being tired. Like it's the same thing. So I am not. I don't think it's a character issue. You think about a guy a couple years back, an Old Miss quarterback by the name of Matt Corral played in the Sugar Bowl back when it wasn't a playoff game, a big game. That's a huge game. He tears his ACL, goes undrafted, or is he like a fifth round, a sixth, a seventh to the Panthers? Never makes it, never gets a real chance. He is currently the starting quarterback for the UFL's Birmingham Stallions, and he will never sniff anything like a round one contract for a top 10 draft pick. So I do not blame Cam Ward at all. I do agree. I'm more concerned about our second topic that we get into. But yeah, Cam Ward, just leave him alone. Leave him alone. The man's gotta get the money for himself and his family. Like I'm not gonna hold that against him.
Yeah, it's kind of to me, I just feel like it's fake outrage. They're trying to generate buzz already for the draft, and he's a top pick. Like I said, he probably is going to be a top two pick in my eyes, maybe a top three. But yeah, I think it's just fake heat trying to get some controversies going, but I didn't see it as a problem at all.
No, not at all. Sorry. I changed up the brightness there because it's getting a
No, you
little
good.
dark. But moving on to our other top quarterback prospect, Shedeur Sanders. Uh, let's just say the Alamo Bowl didn't go as planned for Shedeur. First of all, wore Giants cleats pregame. Giants win yesterday, so drop out of that top pick. But not only that, he did not look good. Now the O line was horrible. I want to say that he didn't have time all day, but I'd argue he didn't have time all season. So I'm not gonna discount it from that, but I'm not gonna be like, oh, well then let's give him a break for this. He went 16 for 23, 208 yards, two touchdowns, two interceptions. Looked flustered all day. Was missing reads, and they absolutely got trounced by BYU. So concern or not concern for you, Andrew?
I will say a little concerned, and this is because mainly the whole reason why these players sit out of bowl games. And I'm torn because I like seeing the starters play in bowl games because I like having meaning to these bowl games because we can be honest, when everybody sits, these games become meaningless. I'm not afraid to admit that. And I really like that Dion he made them play, but then he said that they would be providing disability insurance for the players if they were to get hurt before the NFL draft, which I thought was ultimately a great thing. Great sign for college football. But I will say, a guy like Shedeur, that can only hurt his draft stock playing in these games. He was already almost a consensus number one overall pick. So, other than the fact that they want to give back to Colorado, what could Shedeur do in that game that could make his draft stock higher? It can't. It could only worsen it. And I will say, I don't think all of the reason that Shedeur played bad was his fault. Like you said, the offensive line was horrible. BYU's D line got through every time. I want to say it was like 7 or 8 times that Shedeur got lit up either for a sack or after a pass. He was constantly being hit. So I'm not surprised he was playing flustered. And BYU's probably one of the best Big 12 schools they've played all year. So it was a great matchup. So, I mean, we saw against Nebraska early in the season, Colorado struggled to protect him. But again, a stout D line get through, they hit him. But my point is, I go back to a guy, and we talked about this offline when we were just chit chatting. Kyle Trask, he had a horrible, horrible Cotton Bowl his senior year. Phenomenal season with Florida. I believe he set the I think he broke Tebow's passing yards record that year too.
Yeah. Yep.
Phenomenal, phenomenal year. They play Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl, and he threw like 3, 4 interceptions. Just a terrible game out of him. And granted, he wasn't going to be a number one overall pick. He was a borderline first round, second round pick guy. I don't remember what round he ended up going in, but that bowl game completely tanked his draft stock. And look, I mean, granted, he went in and sat behind Tom Brady, but Kyle Trask has never gotten substantial minutes in the NFL. And something like that ultimately impacts you. And I think Shedeur will still be a high round draft pick, but people are starting to see flaws in Shadeur's game, or at least they think they see flaws in his game. And people are starting to get concerned about it. And that's, not a great showing. So I'm always curious of why guys decide to play in games if it can only hurt them. And obviously, Dion was a big factor of why Shedeur played. But ultimately, I think some quarterbacks in positions like this should sit in bowl games. That's just my opinion. Like I said, don't give yourself any way to make your stock worse. Go into your pro day and the combine, show out there and get your $25 million signing bonus and be a first round pick or first overall pick.
You know, I feel like it's Dion's blame here. This is going to be Dion's blame because we can sit here and fantasize and say that Dion thinks Colorado is the best team in college football and blah 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 because every coach is supposed to. But we could have seen from a mile away that BYU's D line was going to run straight through them. They were great all year. That was one of the main things that BYU hung its hat on is how good their D line was, and it was going to be a bloodbath. Now, the one thing that I want to say, and I agree with you, he shouldn't have played in the game. He was the number one prospect. Don't play in the game. Travis Hunter too. He didn't play bad, but he didn't look good on defense at all. The effort was horrible, but I don't blame him. Two guys not going to benefit. Now everyone else, like Shiloh, he always lumps in Shiloh. Shiloh could help his draft stock in that game because he's probably not getting drafted or he's a day 3 pick. That's something that you could build on, but not these two guys. We're talking about possibly the 1 and 2 picks. Like you can't get higher than that. So it's not worth it. But I want to say I got to talk about it. The three best defenses that Colorado played this year: Nebraska, K State, BYU. Shedeur played terribly. Now he was being chased the entire game from start to finish in all three of those games, but he didn't look good. And I want to say, we're going to sound like salty fans right now, right? Like our both of our NFL teams played their ways out of drafting him, the Raiders and the Giants. But think about how bad our offensive lines are. Would Shedeur thrive behind those offensive lines? Hell no. So that's where you draw the connection of Colorado to the Raiders, the Titans, the Browns, or the Giants, all teams that need quarterbacks at the top of the draft. Like, if he can't play well against good defenses in college with a bad offensive line, what makes you think that he's going to be able to do it in the NFL? And I only see it getting worse in that. Now, don't get me wrong, he's got the talent, but I don't see how you can draft a guy number one, knowing that every good defense he plays down. Like he plays worse. Now, you could be like, oh, well, then just build the O line, but it's not that simple. So I do question like, is this going to hurt him? I don't think so. I think like he's pretty much sold. Like Dion sold him well. He sold himself well. He played enough to be a top five pick, probably number one, or not with the Pats, but probably like two or three. But it is something to kind of like ponder, like just think about it.
Yeah, I again, it's a concern, and I think scouts will be looking at that and probably already have been. But we're kind of at the point, especially with this quarterback class, where you might be able to overlook that. Like, obviously, it's a big concern, and I agree. That was a great point bringing up the lackluster offensive lines that he'll be going into because you make the assumption with most of the quarterbacks that we see that get taken so high, guys like CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, all these guys, they come in playing under arguably some of the best offensive lines in all of college football, but Colorado is nowhere near the top of offensive lines. They're probably not even middle of the pack. I would say they're an
Yeah, they're
underwhelming,
bottom.
yeah, especially in Power Four. So you can, to me, that's a double-edged sword because yes, he looks flustered at times, but at the end of the day, you take one of the worst offensive lines and you win 9 games with them. There is a
That's
bit
true.
of comfort where he will be semi-adjusted to constant pressure. Yes, he looks flustered, but at the end of the day, any rookie's going to. Think about it. Look at Bryce Young. Bryce Young had no time his rookie year because that offensive line in Carolina is awful. And he couldn't handle it, but he was that Mahomes magic maker at Bama where anytime there was pressure, he could get out of it, but there was almost no pressure. So I think it's a double-edged sword, but even though that bit of flusteredness against the three best defenses that he played all year, he struggled against. Like I said, I think he's by and far in terms of ability better than pretty much every other quarterback in this class. Cam Ward is up there too, but it's not like anybody is going to relatively jump from, let's say, like getting taken at 15, like a Carson Beck, and jump all the way up to he's getting taken at 5. I think it's still going to be Shedeur unless he just has a horrible combine and pro day and all the interviews. I think right now it's a concern, but it's something that can be adjusted, something you can look past, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I do wonder with both of these guys if we're kind of painting them like it could go either way. I could be sitting here, oh, Tyler's an idiot. A year from now, they're both rookie of the year, obviously just stalwart quarterbacks for the next decade or whatever with their franchises. But I feel like we're painting them as like, oh yeah, definitely like you're not missing on him. But there have been quarterback classes where no one is good. Go back to when the Giants drafted Daniel Jones. Such a fond day for me. I remember that so fondly. We got Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence, and Baker, the DB from Georgia, who ended up being a criminal or whatever. Dexy, love him. But that class, Kyler, uh, Daniel Jones, I can't even remember the other guys. I can't even. That's the only two I remember, but none of them were good.
Wayne Haskins too.
Yeah, Dwayne, RIP, obviously, but not a good career. Just simply put, um, there are years like that. You have,
2022. I mean, we watched that
yeah,
draft from our college dorm. Kenny
yeah,
Pickett, Matt Corral, Malik Willis, Bailey Zappi. The only one notable, Sky Thompson, too. The only one of any note is Mr. Irrelevant from that year's draft, which was
yeah.
Brock Purdy.
So I'm a little nervous, and that's why having a day space from it that the Giants won, I'm not as upset as I was. But I think both of these guys are amazing. I've honestly been arguing on Instagram all day about this, so this one hits home to me. Just on arguing in the Fox Sports comment section if you want to check it out. But yeah, so both of these guys they're going to be fine. I don't see this affecting their draft stock. But I do wonder, like, if people are picking these bones with these two guys, did they really think they were that good to begin with? Like, I don't know. I don't know. That's really the question.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, like I said, but we've seen the final game out of both of them in college, so now we can only wait and see once it gets closer to April and the draft. I think it's gonna be really interesting. And we're all going to have confirmation bias because we won't know until we know, but
Yeah.
people are going to start to make assumptions early as possible. I don't think anybody should be hitting the panic button yet, but I still go back. I don't understand why Shedeur played other than the fact that Dion made him, but he had too much to lose and not much to gain. So I thought that was really interesting to note. But like I said, I'm not jumping on any on a worry train yet. I'm not panicking. Time will tell. We'll see how they look in the combine. We'll see how they look at, pro day. We'll see. I mean, I don't remember, did either of them get invited to the Senior Bowl?
I don't believe so. I don't
Okay.
remember seeing anything. They might, maybe they'll go, but they're
Yeah.
not going to play.
I
There's no
just
way
didn't
they're going to
remember
play in
off the
that game.
top of my head. Yeah, but we know what we'll get out of them. We're going to be able to watch film, obviously, in the offseason. We're going to do draft analysis on
Oh,
both
yeah.
of them. We'll go into depth about that. But yeah, we just got to wait it out. No one should panic yet. I don't see the outrage with Ward. Don't panic yet on Shedeur. But anything else out of you?
Oh no, I'm just super excited. This is kind of a little teaser with the Iowa Missouri game going on right now. By the time this video is posted, however, we will have a full slate of great games. My LSU Tigers are playing in the Texas Bowl 3:30. We also got the Relia Quest Bowl at noon. With Alabama and Michigan, that'll be interesting. But great football, and here we go. Here we go.
Yeah,
This is it. Here we're in the last three. I guess you would call them weeks since we got the semifinals and the championship after that, and then we get into the draft. I can already feel it coming. Andrew and I have been waiting for this, man. We're excited to give you draft content, but for the time being, let's enjoy some football. Why not?
exactly. Yeah. We got a great slate this weekend, and obviously, we're going to cover the remainder of the college football season. We're having a great time doing it. Thank you so much, for listening, sticking around with us. Like I said, going forward, once the season ends, we're going to go into draft analysis, our picks, mock drafts, kind of breaking down film and player IDs, all of that. So, thank you so much for watching. This has been another episode of Sideline Signal. I'm Andrew, always joined by my wonderful co-host, Tyler. Like I said, great slate of games today because this will be posted in the morning. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. Follow us on TikTok as well at Sideline Signal. We post a lot more content there. Thank you for our listeners on Spotify. And other than that, yeah, let's get out. Let's watch some great football games. We'll be back next week to talk about them and preview the semifinals and other bowl games. But yeah, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.